Welcome to the Pet Loss Companion. I'm Ken Dolan-Del Vecchio. I'm here with my friend and co-author, Nancy Saxton-Lopez. And this is a program that we do every Thursday from 6 to 6:30. Nancy, there's some kind of reverb. Is your phone on?
No.
Is my phone on? Sorry. No. Anyway, let me continue. It's a program that we do every Thursday from 6 to about 6:30, and it is a way for us to broaden the reach of the work that we published years ago. It's called The Pet Loss Companion: Healing Advice from Family Therapists Who Lead Pet Loss Groups. This is our book, and this program allows us to dialogue with members of the audience, and we do that on many of the programs. Sometimes we have guests and sometimes we have topic discussions. But in any case, if you would like to share a story, and we're certainly welcoming of your story, please send your email to me at kenddv@gmail.com or Nancy at nsaxtonlopez at csmpc.com. That's nsaxtonlopez at csmpc.com. Everything that I'm saying in the beginning here is in the description. So if I move kind of fast, you always can look at the description as a reference point. You can support the work that we do on the program in a number of different ways. One is to become a subscriber to our Substack, which is where we post the letters that we receive from audience members, along with any photos they send us and also our responses. Sometimes there's a bit of back and forth in the correspondence. Many people found reading to be as supportive and helpful as the audio piece that we do here, the video piece. You can support our work through a Venmo donation or PayPal or a monthly subscription on Spotify. The program is a friend of Dakin Humane Society in Springfield, Mass. For more on Dakin, you can see the program description or go to dakinhumane.org. Dakin sponsors a monthly cost-free Zoom pet loss support group that I facilitate. It's usually on the second Tuesday of the month. It runs from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and there's an RSVP link. The next in the description, the next program will be on the 11th, which is next week, next Tuesday. And if you'd like to join us, please do RSVP. There's no cost to you, and people join from all over the world. It can be quite an interesting conversation. And if you RSVP and then you decide you can't go, please do let me know so that we can reopen the registration for another person who may benefit from it. Finally, please consider pressing the subscribe button on YouTube if you find this program valuable. Doing so will make the program more visible to people who are looking for this kind of support. And then also, we just like you to know that we have an affiliate relationship with a business called Bereave, and Bereave makes these very well crafted granite memorial plaques. And here's an example in the image I'm showing. Nancy's going to show us the one that they gave us as a sample. And if you were to purchase this memorial plaque, you would also be giving a measure of support to our program. And there you go. So Nancy, want to get us started?
Okay, we have two stories tonight, and they are returned people, right? From having losses in the past and that we have talked to. The first we're going to read is Tara with her Indiana or Indy. Ken and Nancy. I wrote
And
to
Nancy,
you.
I'm just going to comment. I can hardly hear you.
Okay,
I'm
so
not sure
well,
what's-
I was worried about the
Yeah,
verb.
maybe,
Okay, can you hear me better now?
better. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wrote to you in December about my traumatic loss of my kitty, Crispin. His loss came 3 months after the loss of our oldest dog, Puzzle. I have struggled every day since losing Crispin, but in April took a 2-week bike trip with our youngest dog, Crispin's companion, Marvel, and have found something approaching equilibrium. Today, we have suffered a third devastating loss in under a year, and said goodbye to our middle dog, Indiana. I wanted to share his story in hopes of finding closure. Our first dog, Puzzle, was a gift to myself upon graduating vet school. When we started looking to expand our family 2 years later, I told my husband he could pick which breed he wanted. We discussed a few options and eventually decided he loved Puzzle so much that he wanted another French Brittany. A month later, we brought home 9-month-old Indiana, and our lives were changed forever. Indy could not be more different from his big brother. Puzzle was gregarious, loved other dogs, outgoing and smart. Indy was reckless and brave physically, but terrified socially. We pushed too hard too fast on our new addition, and our inexperience with nervous dogs soon turned anxiety into fear and fear into aggressive reactivity. Indy was sweet and silly at home, but lashed out at dogs other than Puzzle and the dogs he grew up with. He would tolerate other Brittanies if they ignored him, but the only dog he ever loved was Puzz. The only person he loved was me. Puzz was supposed to be my dog, and Indy was supposed to be my husband's, Nick's dog, but they had other plans, and Indy became my shadow. I have never met anything on this planet who worshiped me like Indy did. Together, we competed in dog shows, hiked mountains, played on beaches, explored the woods. Nick said he was my apocalypse dog, just wanting all other dogs and people to disappear so it could be just the two of us. Indiana struggled his whole life with anxiety and impulsivity. He was stressed by dogs, strangers in the house, but fine outside our home, crates, and separation from me. He also had a bad habit of acting before thinking. Who looks before they leap? Not Indy, for sure. My quest to help calm his frayed nerves and teach him some self-control started me on a lifelong journey to understand fear, reactivity, and aggression in dogs. I taught myself so much and made lots of mistakes along the way. Indy forgave every single one. In 2015, we started taking reactive dog classes at a wonderful local facility and finally made progress. He was never going to be a dog park dog, but he could see another dog without a meltdown, and it put his trust in me to keep him safe. We started taking classes in nose work, a sport in which dogs find hidden scents modeled after bomb-sniffing dogs. We found a new obsession together, and we poured ourselves into learning to work together and communicate as a team. He blossomed with new confidence as he had something at which he naturally excelled. I started training Puzzle as well, and soon we were all competing. My nervous, reactive dog had a job, and it was just what he needed. I made dozens of friends, and we shared in our dog's triumphs and setbacks and delighted in each one's idiosyncrasies. Indy was known for charging in and sweeping through like a tornado. When his nose started working, he stopped watching where he was going, and my job was to stop him from hurting himself or destroying the room while he searched. He would climb and jump on obstacles and pull out anything that wasn't nailed down in his pursuit of scent and his love of the game. In 2016, we added a puppy, Marvel. He and Indy loved playing together, their boundless energy swirling around the yard, a sight to behold. He also started competing in nose work, and everything seemed wonderful. At about a year old, we made a major mistake and let Marvel out to play with Indy when the former was pent up and energetic, and the latter was stressed and anxious. Marvel plowed into his buddy, expecting to wrestle, and instead was met with teeth and anger. I was badly bitten, breaking up the ensuing fight, and never again could the two dogs stand each other despite my best efforts to reconcile them. We began a long journey of training and management, a rotating system of doors and gates where they were never in the same room, and we dedicated much of our time to making sure both of their needs were met. Since 2017, we have held the system with only 2 brief mistakes, luckily with no serious injuries either time. And in that entire time, we never felt we could leave them with a dog sitter in case a fatal mistake was made. If we left town, all 3 dogs came with, or one person stayed home. It was hard, but worth it to keep both dogs in our home as safe where they were so loved. One night in 2018, I was walking Puz in Indy late at night, and 2 men approached and got on either side to box me in, then got closer, closing in on me, and asked if my dogs were friendly. Blessed by gregarious dog's heart, Puzzle was wiggling and trying to say hi. Indy, normally not human aggressive, raised his hackles and lunged, snarling and snapping. He looked completely unhinged. They beat a quick retreat. I'm convinced he saved my life that night. In 2021, Puzzle was diagnosed with aggressive oral melanoma, and we prepared to say goodbye, given a likely timeline of about 6 to 10 months. We made him a bucket list and grieved. 10 months came and went. We celebrated an extra birthday we never expected him to have. He then ruptured a disc in his spine a year after his cancer diagnosis, and we went through major surgery because he was otherwise healthy. That, however, spelled the end of him spending time with rambunctious Indiana during the day. Indy's world got more lonely. His anxiety, always up and down, worsened and became an ongoing struggle with elaborate routines to keep him calm and secure while we were away. He took major backward steps in his great anxiety as well, undoing years of hard work as the stress levels increased. We lost Puz in August of 2023, not to his back or his cancer. The melanoma vaccine brought us over 2 years we didn't think we would have, but to canine cognitive dysfunction, dementia. He stopped recognizing friends and family, then Marvel, then Indy. He became aggressive when confused and would become agitated when confined, but hurt himself when left free. Indy's world was devastated when his best friend started lashing out at him and then left forever. He was alone, struggling with severe arthritis and more anxious than ever. We lost our cat Crispin in November due to an error I made. He died in terrible distress of overheating suffocation, caught in the dog food bin with a lid that fell shut with him inside. Indy did not like the cats and was not usually allowed around them, but he felt the effects of the death and my deep depression and self-loathing, both of us grieving and stressed. But we butted heads more often. I found it hard to keep up with the exercise and enrichment for him, and his resultant acting out was hard to deal with. We still found peace in snuggling together on the couch, walks in the park, and nose work. Always nose work would reconnect us. In January, he competed in his first elite level trial and had an amazing day, winning one of our searches and performing respectively overall for a 13-year-old dog with severe arthritis and diminishing hearing and sight. His new arthritis medicines and anxiety medications finally seemed to have him comfortable again. I was still struggling, but things seemed to find a new normal.
In March, he got into a plate of chicken bones and became seriously ill, almost dying. The emergency room did an ultrasound and saw a slightly thickened area of intestine and a small growth on the liver. Either could be cancer or something else. The only way to know would be open abdomen surgical biopsies, as both lesions were too deep to access with a needle. We had decided we would not put Indy through any abdominal surgery at his age, especially since his confinement issues meant a high likelihood he would harm himself. I'm just going to try something with the muting. Would harm himself severely during recovery. Can you hear me, Nancy? You can, okay. Hear me during recovery. He recovered from his illness, and we knew eventually those abnormalities might come up again, but resolved to enjoy his remaining time. In mid-May, 7 weeks after the initial ultrasound, and on the 6-month anniversary of losing Crispin, Indiana started vomiting and skipping meals. I had a bad feeling and scheduled an ultrasound for 2 days later. It was devastating. The small nodule in the liver was now several huge tumors. He had more cancer than liver left. The slightly thickened intestinal section was now huge and swollen, reducing the size of opening for food to pass through and causing the vomiting we were seeing, as he could not get a full meal digested at once, leading to bloating and abdominal pain. We spent 10 days saying our goodbye. He got nausea medicine, pain medicine, 4 small meals a day mashed up so he could pass the particles through such a small opening. We ripped up chicken nuggets and hamburgers and French fries into tiny pieces. We went to the beach that weekend and got a permit to drive on the sand. We drove until there was no one around for miles but us, and we could walk without fear of other dogs or sketchy people interrupting our time. He tired easily, asking to go back to the car after short walks, but we watched the shorebirds and the waves and even a few ponies out there on the sand. This week, I took him for a hike on the trail we would frequent during the pandemic, isolated when my world was falling apart for the third time in 9 months. He couldn't do the whole trail, but he wanted to try. His heart wanted to do what his body could no longer manage. This morning, we took him to my parents' house on the C&O Canal. We walked the canal for the last time and sat in the shade overlooking the river. He got a huge fudge sundae as the vet gave him the sedative injection, and danged if he didn't almost finish it as he fell asleep. His tongue was still moving, trying to lap it up long after his eyes closed. I held him in my arms, all 35 pounds of muscle and bone and bad decisions, and I felt him take his last breath as I sobbed. I wanted so bad for him to stay, but it was not fair to put him through the stresses of diagnosis and treatment, especially knowing that a cancer progressing so quickly, it would be unlikely to buy him much more time, only fill his remaining time with endless visits to waiting rooms crowded with strange people and dogs. But oh, how I wanted to selfishly cling to him. Letting him go today was the hardest decision I made in a year of hard decisions. Our whole lives have been shaped around him and his needs for almost 13 years. While eventually I'm sure we will appreciate the increased freedom to travel and decreased stress of managing 2 separated dogs, for now, all I feel is the horrifying weight of quiet and emptiness. I turned 40 years old with 4 pets and will turn 41 in a couple of weeks with only one of those left alive. The sense of loss takes my breath away. If something happens to Marvel, I'm not sure I will survive it. I'm sorry for such a long email. I feel hopeless and lost right now and wanted to tell his story to someone who didn't know him already so you could see him through my eyes. He was fearful and reactive and a lot of danged work, but he was loyal and protective of me. He would glare at my husband when I cried, convinced it must be Nick's fault I was upset. He would blow bubbles in his big water bottle. He once ate 5 pounds of chocolate by himself after Puzzle figured out how to use a doorknob and let them both into the room with the Christmas candy. Vomit induction showed that Puzzle did not partake. We would get excited when he saw the doggy backpack coming out because it meant a hike long enough that he would have to carry his own water. He once tried to walk off the same pier 4 times during a search, following his nose and not paying attention to his surroundings. He would get so excited to work during training that he wouldn't swallow his treat before he would start running again. It's a miracle he didn't choke to death. He once pulled a can of paint off the shelf in the basement and painted himself and most of the floor. He would yodel at me when it was bedtime and I was taking too long. He learned how to collapse folding chairs this week during our nosework class and had the whole group in stitches as he realized he could make us laugh. He was messy and loud and difficult and hilarious. Most of all, he was mine, and I don't think anyone has ever loved me as single-mindedly as he did. I don't know how I will make it through this again. Tara.
So 3 babies have died in a year for
Yeah.
Tara.
Yeah,
And
she's
what
lost.
they've gone through with Puzzle was there at Crispin, and then with Indy, there was so many things going on. Indy was so different, right? Had a lot of fears and anxieties, and she worked with them, all of them, but mostly Indy, to get to a place where he thrived, right? He thrived, and he was a different dog. And then of course Puzzle dies. He gets all these things and dementia, and then Crispin dies. And I can't, and then of course Indy dies, and I can't imagine. I, it's too hard for all of that death.
Well, what strikes me is that this was not all a bed of roses. It was challenging, and as she said, he was difficult in a number of ways, but she loved him no matter what, and she began to love his idiosyncrasies as we do with an animal who is like this. And so she wasn't angry at him. She wasn't wanting to exile him from their home. She just loved him. And it was beautiful.
Care of them, and he at the end even she knew that she had to let him go, but she says, I selfishly don't want to, right? And then she goes through all these wonderful memories about him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and how special, what a character he was, right? And of course she loves, Marvel too. I mean, but 3 deaths in 1 year is so hard. I can't even imagine.
So we want to thank Tara very much for sharing this story. Actually, the second story that she shared with us, and we wish her solace in the time ahead. And Nancy, what I'm doing is I'm muting you when I'm talking because something's up with our technology, and we don't have the echo.
Yeah, we're good.
Something's up. I don't know what. But so I'm going to go ahead and read. Let's see. I'm going to read Danielle's story, and this is Danielle's story about her dog, Nilla. She writes, Nancy and Ken, I hope this email finds you both well. I must admit it has been months since I've listened to the podcast, but I assume you both are still out there helping others like myself heal and find peace in loss. Thank you for all you do. Today is the 1 year mark. So this is a story about loss and how it shapes our lives and shapes our emotions over time. Today is the 1 year mark. 1 year since I said goodbye to my baby, my best girl, my Nilla. Let me show a picture of Nilla and Danielle. She was beautiful. I can truly say there hasn't been a single day that I've not thought of her. Many tears shed and many lonely moments, wishing she was here with me still. I've learned so much in this past year about myself and grief. One thing I've learned firsthand is that everything they say about grief is absolutely true. It's illogical. It doesn't make sense. It comes in waves. It's also true that you'll survive, even in the moments that it truly feels impossible to take another breath. It's true that time will heal your heart, never completely, but little by little. It's true that life keeps going on, whether you're ready or not. I will never say that I've moved on from Nilla, and I know that I never will. She will always be my true heart and soul dog, my first baby, a true love. But I can honestly say that I'm moving forward, wishing she was with me, but accepting that she is not. I will miss her and love her until the day that I die. I'm absolutely sure. We have a new fur baby, Luna, that is the true stereotypical second child. Nilla made us believe we could, and Luna makes us question every moment of pet parenthood. Although she could never and will never replace Nilla, she has filled out quiet and lonely home once more with tappy nails on the hardwood and fur in all the places, greeting us with pure joy when we walk through the door. Home is not home without a loving dog, and I'm thankful we have Luna to come home to. As I write this email, 1 year exactly, it's pouring rain, and I think that is very fitting. I think that God is showing his empathy in our grieving today for the child lost to us but gained by him. I pray she hears every word I whisper to her and sees every tear full of love that I've cried until we meet again. And that's from Danielle.
Full way for her to describe the grieving process. I mean, how she outlined that, how she communicated that in her email was really heartfelt and real and emotional, and really goes to the core of the period of time, the challenge that we have over time in grief.
Yep. We have a comment from Grace Under Fire,
Hi, Grace.
who says, Tara, the love you and Indy shared sounds so special. My heart hurts for you as you deal with all these recent losses. Thanks for that, Grace. But it is great to see the perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And as she said, feels a little better all the time, but it doesn't go away. And then the anniversary happens, and that makes grief take on a whole new life for a brief period. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, and certainly for Danielle.
Mm-hmm. She's loving Luna, but as we know, she's incorporating the loss, in her with Nilla, but we grieve forever. It's just changed, right?
And Grace writes another comment, which is, Danielle, I have no doubt that Nilla is with you still and hears every word and sees every tear. And thank you for that. And Sharon says, I lost my Benny in September of last year, and I still can't look at all of his little shirts. Yeah, it takes whatever time it takes, right? Some people will say, I have to hold on to all of the mementos. Some people would say I have to have all those little shirts in view, and other people like Sharon would say, no, I can't go anywhere near them yet.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So we want to thank Danielle
Mm-hmm.
for sharing where she is in the grief process. And we want to thank Tara once again for sharing her story of Indy and Puzzle. And Nancy, it's always great to be with you. We got to figure out this echo thing. We'll do that, I'm sure. And thank you for bearing with us if you're listening. Take care.